Well, thanks for staying with us tonight. Judge Dennis Davis says it's unacceptable that politicians continue to claim that the judiciary is biased without providing evidence. He says those criticizing the judiciary should be held in contempt of court. Davis's comments come after former President Jacob Zuma accused the courts of partaking in political gimmicks. Well, he joins us tonight for this conversation. Good evening, Judge Davis. It's a pleasure to have you on. Perhaps the good place to begin would be why you think that these allegations are outrageous, and just explore the idea of the capturing of judges for me from the perspective of politicians versus ordinary South Africans who could also well hold such a view.
Well, let me put it this way. I've been a judge for almost 23 years. I've served on a number of courts, the Cape High Court, the Labour Appeal Court, the Competition Appeal Court. I've acted at the Supreme Court of Appeal. So I'd like to think that, I've been around the judicial block for a very long time. Now, I can't tell you that every single judge in the country is, totally impeccable. I'm not able to do that. What I can tell you is that the 99.9%, I mean, there may be a couple of rotten apples, I don't know. But what I am saying to you is that the output of the judiciary as a whole is exemplary in terms of the fact that it is the one institution of state that has held to the Constitution, defended and promoted the Constitution, and we should be proud of it. It's an institution of considerable virtue in which very hardworking, talented people are trying to do the very best they can with, I might add, very limited resources available to them.
Of course, people's perceptions of the judiciary isn't just limited to the individuals themselves. It also comes down to the individual's experience with in one way, the criminal justice system, but also with accessing justice. And to the extent that we have so many South Africans who battle to be able to get what they believe are fair trials simply because they can't afford good lawyers or they're hard done by the system, they then also believe, well, maybe there is something to these claims that the judiciary is captured and that it's there to serve a few and not everyone.
Well, you're conflating 2 points, and that's dangerous for a reason I'll tell you in a moment. The first point is absolutely correct, that we do not have adequate access to justice, that poor people across the board do not get a fair crack, that they often are not able to present their cases the way they can or indeed get access to courts 100%. I agree entirely, and it's something which certainly I've spent most of my life trying to deal with, obviously, like others, not necessarily entirely satisfactory. Now, that is a cause which goes way beyond the judiciary. That is an inadequacy of legal aid, too expensive legal representation, rules of court which seem to me in some instances to constitute obstacles and impediments rather than encouragement to litigate. And so you will not find me pushing against you on that. But that is not the same as accusing judges of being corrupt or judges of being captured. That's an entirely different category of person. And I'd venture to say that the first category wants to get to court because they think that if they get there, they may well get a fair hearing. The second group, generally you only have to look at from where it comes. These are people under huge pressure because they don't want to go to court, because when they do go to court, they lose cases, and therefore they seek to find justification for the adverse findings against them by blaming the judiciary. That's like blaming a football team that loses for a referee's decision when they've been outplayed on the field.
But part of the reason why I've put it in that way, Judge Dennis, is that we have, and it's something that you've probably heard before, of people believing that judges can be bought to deliver certain judgments or to find in certain ways. And
who are these people? Just out of interest, who are these people?
Well, you have ordinary...
I know who they are. Yeah. I know who they are, and you know who they are. Yeah. And ask yourself, to whom are they associated? And why are they doing this?
Do you think that the criticism against the judiciary is basically confined to the politics of the day and significant political figures?
Yes, I do, and I think it's not necessarily only in South Africa. I wrote a book with Michel Leroux called Lawfare, in which we try to expose our analysis was an attempt to try to expose and analyze why it is that political cases increasingly land up in the courts, hence the word lawfare. And it's not necessarily only South Africa where that occurs. We can look at the way in which the British courts were viciously attacked by parliamentarians and politicians when they found against Brexit. The same process occurs. The same process occurred when Donald Trump had adverse findings against him. He either attacked the identity of the judge or the politics of the judge in some particular way. It always happens in these kinds of situations. It's not unique to South Africa, but it's perfectly understandable why it occurs. That does not make it right. And I do not believe that the vast majority of people share that particular opinion. That's why I'm trying to confine it to this category.
And why do we have so many people who agree nonetheless? So when you just check, and I really don't like to be using this as a sentiment gauge right now, because it can't be seen as credible research. But generally, if you go onto your Twitter feed, if you do that from time to time, and you see what it is that people are saying about the country's judiciary, you would have a significant number of people expressing views that seem to agree.
No, you wouldn't. What you'd have are bots, and you'd have particularly orchestrated campaigns by certain kinds of people. You know, I interviewed Really Clubby the other day for my Daily Maverick program, and she rightly said to me, and I think it's true, the media are obsessed by Twitter. Twitter does not represent the country. It represents a very, very small percentage of the country, and we know through the phenomenon of fake news that certain people are able to orchestrate views. When you track it to who's arguing this, these are people who are supporting those who have been subjected to adverse findings. These aren't people who apply an objective mind to the output of the judiciary.
So in terms of then looking forward, when it comes to this argument that absolutely there must be evidence provided, in the absence of evidence, the issue of taking greater action, what do you think that will lead to?
Well, no, when I spoke about contempt, I think if you call a judge corrupt or you insult the judge, it's not the judge. You know, I was never particularly fazed. I'm not fazed by individual attacks on me. I mean, they're upsetting and they're awful. But, you know, I understand it comes with the territory. I do think when the institution, when you attack the judge on a basis of unsubstantiated allegations, you are undermining a precious institution. An institution that is vital to constitutional democracy in South Africa. And if you do so without substantiation, you are in contempt of court. And there is a way in which then the process should unfold, and you should be held accountable for that. You can't just go around making blithe allegations because you lose a case. There are appeals. And the appeals mean that you have a whole series of checks and balances that hope at the end of the day that you get the decision, if you're a judge, correct. Let me make the point. I don't say we're always right. That's not what I'm arguing. I've certainly made mistakes as a judge, and others have too. We all do, right? Because we're human. But when we make a mistake, it's bona fide. That's the name of the game. There's a very difference between saying a judge got it right, got it wrong from a legal point of view, and saying the judge was bought. Now, if you're going to say, you know, he only gave that judgment because he was bought, that's contempt of court. That undermines the institution. And unless you've got some basis for saying that, either you should be held liable or you should keep quiet.
From a practical implementation point of view, who do you see as a custodian of such a process who would then be the person to institute these proceedings?
Well, obviously, judges themselves can do so. We have a curious process of contempt. I've always found that rather odd, I might add. Or somebody else can. And certainly the NPA can. Civil society can bring such applications. The truth about it is the Bar Council can. Not that they ever seem to defend us, but they can and should. And the Legal Practice Council should intervene in these questions. You have to protect the institution. It's precious. We really have a precious institution here without which you and I will not have freedom of speech, and we will not have any of the other freedoms we enjoy, because the custodian of all of that in many ways ultimately is the judiciary. And let me make one other point. We should be incredibly proud of our constitutional court. Its judgments are cited all over the world because it's recognized as a serious articulator of constitutional values. And instead of insulting it, we should embrace it. It makes mistakes, but that's fine. And then criticize them. And you should. If you think a court is wrong, write an article, write a letter, say why the legal principles are wrong, say why it got the facts wrong. That's very different from the kind of rhetoric we're hearing at the moment.
Do you generally believe right now that given where the public discourse is, that judicial institutions do need defending?
I definitely do. I think we are under pressure. And I do think that judges, will know, they know that when you give a judgment which may be politically unpopular to some wing, you are going to be subjected to extraordinary levels of pressure. Might add, the counsel are being subjected to extraordinary levels of insult when they defend their clients. And the whole idea of defending clients isn't that you believe the client, it's that you're acting on behalf of a client because the client actually has the right to legal representation. We need to get this right. We need to understand that this works in all our advantages. Whether we're actually arguing fine in unpopular cases, we represent unpopular people, there's got to be some broader respect. And yes, I do think it's under some threat, yes.
What is the impact of that? You talk about the pressure that judges are under. They're aware of this as they make rulings. What is the impact of that in terms of their own ability to do their jobs, or as they do their jobs?
Well, I think they do. I think judges are, have shown enormous resilience in South Africa over the last number of years. I'm proud to be part of this institution. I'm proud of my colleagues for having, done what they've done, which is to find fearlessly and independently and trying their very best to give legal decisions which are as justifiable as possible. But the fact of the matter is that if you carry on this kind of a run of attacks on the judiciary, you undermine it. You probably then find people don't want to become appointed to judges because they feel that they're going to be subject to this kind of abuse. They feel that it's better for the quiet life. And you then do exactly what you've said, is that people start saying, well, where there's smoke, there's fire, and therefore there must be something wrong with the judiciary. So the truth is these unsubstantiated and wild allegations have a very detrimental effect on this institution.
Judge Dennis Davis, let me thank you so much for your time on News at Prime tonight.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.